So the time has arrived. This is what you've been waiting for. Today we're going to start with the video explanations for our new PDF, Liberty Challenge Volume 1. We're going to start with the verbal section. We're going to do the first 10 sentence correction exercises, okay? So before that, of course, I know you've been doing all the exercises from the PDF. That's good because the more you practice, the better for you. Okay, so, but before that, let me give some shout outs to a couple people. Thiago Zamora for getting a 106 on the TOEFL last week. So Thiago, you did a wonderful job. And Sofia Ruiz for getting a 760 on her GMAT today. So Sofia, also, we're really proud of you, okay? So just keep on practicing, all of you guys. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Of course, I know you already subscribed, but also to follow us in our different social media sites such as Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So now we're going to start with this solving the challenge. Okay, so the first sentence correction exercise is this one, okay? The answer here is, I'm sorry, let me go. Okay, the answer here is B, right? Why? Okay, there is an idiom here, the same X as Y. That's what we call a correlative idiom, which means you need to have parallelism between whatever falls in between same and as and whatever comes after as. If you notice here, to say the same to blah 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 blah, as, you need as to blah blah blah. You don't actually need a to, right? But you need a preposition because to is a preposition, so you need to start with a prepositional phrase. So you need as and then you need a to. So letter A is not right. Now, what about the semicolon? Of course, if you've been preparing for the GMAT, you should already know one of the most important, essential, basic concepts. When you have a semicolon, you need a main clause to the left, main clause to the right. Actually, all of these have problems because to the right, they are not main clauses, right? Some people might think that letter D and letter E contain main clauses, especially letter D, right? Because you have an it, would. So that's a subject and a verb, but that's not enough though because you have an as, which is a subordinator, so that ends up being a subordinated clause, what we call a dependent clause, right? So that's not a main clause. So that's out because of a semicolon, out because of a semicolon, out, and the answer is B. Fairly simple, okay? Fairly simple. So these types of concepts, the semicolon, it's something you should dominate by the time you move to intermediate, okay? So watch our videos, don't rush. If this seems difficult to you, then you should just start tackling these easy questions. Do not move yet to intermediate questions. Okay, now let's go to the next one. Number two. Number two is a little bit more difficult than the first one, but it's still an easy question. Now, the thing here is, the answer I think is D here, right? Yeah, D. Now, declaring versus declared. That's the thing. Now, you notice that when you read the first sentence, it's not even a sentence, because in order to have a sentence, you need a subject and a verb. Declaring here, this ing, this present participle, it's not a verb. You need a verb. So that's out, no verb, no verb. You hear in letter C, D, and E, declared is functioning, is serving as a verb. So that's fine. Okay, that's fine so far. So those three. We eliminate A and B so far. Now, between these ones, there is another very simple thing here. Like versus as. Now, like versus as, the theory is very simple. Something really basic. If you're going to set examples, you never use like. Okay, I know a lot of you guys speak English, and colloquially, people use like. Yeah, that's colloquially. That's not formal English, all right, informal English. But when you are speaking formally, professionally, like in this case, you're writing something, you cannot use like in order to set examples. So like is out. Okay, that's something also very basic. This is GMAT 101. We're not touching anything that is intermediate yet. So we have these two things here, this D and E, these two options. And the problem here is within serving and to serve, the right idiom for fail is fail to something. Fail plus to, idiomatic construction, right? So you say with D and E is out. Fairly simple, okay? These ones are easy. You should take around 1 minute to solve them because they're very easy. Now we go to the third one. Now we come to a third one here. This one's a little fun, right? Because the hippies, right? The hippies were vegetarian, but somehow they also ate a fatty, greasy steak. Okay, that's kind of weird, okay? But All right, you have a but here. When you have a but, you think about two things: meaning, contrast, and also parallelism, right? Parallelism. Okay, so now the first question you should ask yourself is: do you need but? Do you need a contrast? I think you need a contrast because these people were vegetarian, but they also ate meat. So they were mainly vegetarian, but they also ate meat. So you need a but here. The only one that doesn't have a contrast is B, so that's out. Okay, all of the other ones have a contrast, but, although, even though, yet. But then you have to use parallelism. But here, supplementing ing to the right, you don't have an ing to the left, that's out. Here, C, although they were, you have a subordinated clause to the right, you don't have a subordinated clause to the left, that's out. Even though this is the answer, right, you have a subordinated clause. When you have a subordinated clause, you don't need parallelism because a subordinator is not a parallel marker, right? That's also basic theory. Letter E, Jet. Jet is a fanboy, is one of the coordinators, right? That does generate parallelism. You have a prepositional phrase to the right. You don't have a prepositional phrase to the left. You do have one in San Francisco, but it doesn't really work that way because it doesn't make sense, right? You don't have the first hip in San Francisco and the first hip is in supplementing. It would make no sense. So letter E is out and you stay with letter D as in David. Okay, so that's number 3. Then we go to number 4. Number 4, we have, this one is a very sad story. Here we talk about the animals, the small mammals, the rodents that survive the impact of the comet Chicxulub, or whatever the name, Chicxulub, I think, right? The comet that basically wiped out all the dinosaurs. So do you imagine that you have these animals in there, these animals see the comet falling down, the whole climate just turns around, and these poor animals have to survive, okay? So this is a story, I dedicate this to these animals. So you have these animals, they had to withstand the coldest temperature. So here we have a list, okay? So a list, they had to withstand, to learn, and to do something else. So it's a list of 3 things. 3 things these poor animals had to do. So actually we can factorize this infinitive. So we don't have to say to withstand, to learn, to adapt. We just say withstand, learn, and adapt. But the only one that gives you that is letter C. Okay, so to withstand, to learn, we're factorizing to, and to adapt. Okay, now the other ones are not parallel. Here we have adapting ing, that's not parallel to learn. Having ing, it's not parallel to learn, so those 2 are out. And then learning here, it's not parallel to the other one. It will be changing the meaning also, right? Because when you have a comma ing, it is no longer an action, it is more like a consequence, or like an explanation of how, right? How something is done or how something is performed. But that's a different meaning, and we don't want that here. Okay, so letter C, remember that one of the principles of sentence correction is you don't want to change the meaning too much. Okay, if you want to keep the meaning as close as possible to the original one. Okay, so that's important. Letter C does the trick. So we stay with that one. Let's go to number 5. Now number 5 is very, very easy. As long as you notice something. This correlative idiom, both X and Y. That's an idiom, that's a construction. So whatever falls in between X and both and whatever is after and has to be parallel, right? Those 2 things have to be parallel. So, and also it's an idiom, so whenever you have both, you need an and. You don't have to, you don't need anything else. You need an and, nothing else. So here, for example, the letter A, both Europe as well as Asia, wrong, because you need an and. You don't need an as well as. You must have and. Same way here, letter E, out. Then you have, for example, letter B, both Europe and in Asia. That's wrong. Why? Because those 2 are not parallel. The first one is a noun, and the second one is a prepositional phrase. That's not parallel. Letter C, both in Europe and Asia, the same thing. In Europe is a prepositional phrase, Asia is a noun. That's not parallel. Letter D, both Europe and Asia, that's fine. Noun and noun, that's the only one that works. Okay, so there we go. Number 5, answer is D. So far we've seen 5 answers already. So if you're enjoying this, just don't forget to follow us in our social media, Instagram, TikTok, and on Facebook also, okay? Now let's go to number 6. Number 6, we have this one about Michael Jackson, right? Michael Jackson is a great artist, and here we have similar to. Similar to is basically comparative, okay? Like other comparatives would be like, unlike, right? Other than, those type of things. That's usually a very simple parallel marker, okay? You have to check which two things are getting compared, okay? So here in this case, similar to other monotone phenoms. The artistic abilities. So here we're comparing phenoms to abilities. That's not right. We want to compare phenoms to Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson is the phenom. Okay, so that's out. Letter A is out. Letter B. Similar to that of. That's possessive. And we're comparing that to Michael Jackson, right? So we cannot compare a thing to a person. So that's out. Letter C, as with other monotone phenoms, Michael Jackson, that's wrong. Why? Because normally we don't have an as plus a preposition or phrase to compare things, but when we do, that's a little bit more advanced, and it's used for different other things. It's used when you want to say that one case is going to get repeated. Okay, this is not the case, so that's how. Letter D, like those of the artistic abilities. That could be, because those of could be replacing the abilities, and then we are comparing it to the abilities, so that's fine. Those are two things. And letter E, similar to that of our abilities, that's wrong, because that of is a singular, abilities is a plural, so that's out, and we stay with letter D as in David again, okay? So that's the answer for number 6. Now we go to number 7. Let me erase this one, okay? So here we have there we have pronouns, right? I think those are fine. To do so versus to do it. Okay, here it's fairly easy. Okay, to do so would work if you want to replace an action. To do it would work if you want to replace a thing. What do we want to replace here? What do they want to attempt? They want to attempt to do what? To build something, right? They want to build something, so that's not a noun, that's an action, so it is wrong, okay? Then, engineers have not been able to build. Okay, then I think that's fine. Engineers have not been able of building. No. Idioms. Able always goes with to. Infinitive. Okay, so able of is wrong. Here we have able of wrong, so B and E are out. And then we have their match attempts. We cannot have match attempts because that has to do with countable versus uncountable modifiers, right? Attempts is a plural, several things, so that's countable, and match is a modifier for uncountable things. Many would be the modifier for countable, so match is wrong. That's how. There are many attempting. That's also wrong because attempting is not a plural noun. Attempting is a gerund. So you cannot have many attempting because attempting would be uncountable, many would be countable, so that's just wrong. Okay. And also it changes the meaning because it says cannot build. That's a different meaning to say they have not been able to build so far, right? So, I mean, maybe in the future they will, but to say that they can't build something, that would be more, that would be stronger, that would be more definitive. Okay, so letter A for us here. Number 8. Okay, here pretty easy. First split which versus causing. We know that ing, basically it's modifying an action, right? It's an adverb to indicate a consequence or an explanation. On the other hand, which is modifying a noun, usually a noun that is next to it. Which here would be wrong. Why? Because malfunction is not even a noun. Malfunction is an action. It's a verb, or it could be an adjective. Okay. In this case, it's a verb, right? The vehicle's cooling system malfunction. That's a whole sentence. So you cannot have a which modifying a verb. That's not its job. It can't do that. So you need cause. Okay. This whole event caused something else. And then between these two things, in letter D, you will have something called as double modifier. Okay, having two modifiers in a row. Okay, that's kind of an intermediate theory for letter D, but that's out. And letter E is the best one. You have parallelism here. Engine oil with to escape with head gasket to explode. So those are two things that are being made parallel here in letter E. So far that's fine. We go to number 9 here. More likely, we have the word more. Whenever we have a comparative adjective, something that ends in ER, like better, shorter, taller, we need a than, right? Instead of is wrong, as is wrong, we need a than here. Rather than is wrong. Why? Because we only need a than. We don't need a rather than. Rather than is a different thing. We only needed a than alone. So we have these two things. Than, and then we have than any other mammal, or than that of any other mammal. This that of stands for something. Something that belongs to that mammal. Okay? What do we want to compare though? The rat to other mammals, or the rat to something that belongs to other mammals, and we want to compare the rat to other mammals, right? So this that of is unnecessary there. It makes a comparison weird, nonsensical. Okay, so for number 9, the answer would be letter D also. Now let's go to number 10 here, the one about, this one is a medium one. Now this one is a medium one. So we're done with the easy ones. Now let's get to the medium ones. Jeff Kinney, the author of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, right? Now let's say here, the trick here is to notice the both here. You have both. If you have both, again, we've gone over this in the past, X and Y, right? You need an and you need to make X and Y parallel. So you have both here, and you have an and here, The Simpsons. So you have both influenced and The Simpsons. That's not parallel. Influence is like a verb. The Simpsons is a noun, so that's out. Letter B. You have both. You would have here by his own experiences, and The Simpsons, again, by his own experiences is a prepositional phrase. The Simpsons is a noun. That's out, right? That's not parallel. Letter C. You don't have both here. Letter E. Again, by with The Simpsons, prepositional phrase against a noun. That's not good. So you are left with these two, and the answer here would be letter D, because you notice there's a difference here. Who wrote? That would be an adjective, but that wrote wouldn't be behaving as a main verb. We need a main verb in that sentence, so we need just wrote, not who wrote. Okay, so that's letter D. Perfect. So now we've gone over 10 explanations for the PDF Liberty Challenge 1. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, if you liked it, just make sure to comment below, to like the video, and also share this with your friends. Okay, see you soon.